All right, I can see that we're live. So welcome everybody once again to Subs and Interview With. Well, today I've got a chartered accountant and qualified insolvency practitioner who has specialised for many years in advising individuals and businesses in times of financial crisis. This person has always worked with small businesses rather than large corporates and has a good understanding of our small business issues. The support for businesses is changing by the day, so it is difficult for anyone to give advice, and every business is different. And she has urged me to ask, please get professional advice that is relevant to your business. And it is, of course, Janet Mayo. So welcome, Janet.
Hi, David. Nice to see you.
It's brilliant that you can join us. I'm glad that we're live on this format. I do find it kind of weird. This is the first time we've Facebook live, and I need to... Oh, there we go. That's why I had my volume down before on Facebook. So I've got to make sure that I can hear you okay. So can you, I'm going to start asking you questions. A couple of technical issues at my end, so please ignore me for the moment. And I am just going to close that down. Right. Let's start with question number one for you, Janet. Right. What is critical to business survival in a crisis?
The thing that is absolutely critical is cash. Cash is king. It seems appropriate at the moment to use a medical analogy. Or we could say that sales, marketing, customer service, your website, all of those things are like the organs in a body. They're critical to your business success. Yes, you won't function without them, but cash is the lifeblood, without which the organs won't function. So it's absolutely critical for any business to make sure that they are treating cash as king. Difficult when there's all these things going on, but it is that thing of making sure you've collected in all the money you can from anybody and everybody that owes you any money. Okay.
So how is the government helping with cash management at the moment?
The government is helping in two ways. One, for small businesses, there is the grant that's available. That's free money. So yes, as a business, go see if you can apply for that. There's £10,000 that will help you through this crisis point. The other key place where the government is giving money is in respect of the furloughing. So paying up to 80% for your employees.
Right.
That's very valuable. That's money that's being given to people to help them keep their businesses going. Okay. Otherwise, the government's giving other support, but it's in the way of loans.
So if this money is being given out, is this to individuals, sole traders, limited companies?
This money is being given out in all sorts of ways. There is money available to businesses, and particularly the business loans are there for them. And similarly for the furloughing, now that over the last few weeks there's been, I say few weeks, it's probably the last 10 days, there's been changes almost weekly or daily in terms of who can get furloughed money. It has now been confirmed that company directors can get it, even though they are the director of the business, and similarly self-employed people.
Okay, I'm still trying to get my Facebook live picture up so I can see if any questions come in there. We have had a first question come in, so I'm going to interject and put that up straight away. Are grants only available if you have a business premises, do you know?
To be honest, I'm not sure about the answer to that question. I think that the grant is available to... it is actually, I think it's only available to somebody who's paying business rates. So the answer to that question is probably yes. But double check, go on your local council website. That's where the way to apply for the grants.
Okay, brilliant. Thank you. And thanks for that question, by the way, Dave. Okay, I understand there's been some changes to directors' responsibilities during the COVID-19 crisis, but I don't really understand what they mean. Can you explain?
I could spend the next half an hour trying to explain to you what it means to be a director when a business is insolvent.
Okay.
Directors obviously have responsibilities all the way through, but primarily those are to the shareholders. When a business becomes insolvent, that changes to be a greater responsibility to the creditors, to the people the business owes money to.
Yeah.
What's changing, or what is being proposed to change, is that where a director could be held personally responsible for continuing to trade when a business is insolvent, there's some relaxations on that, but it's still open to discussion. There's lots of different ways that you may be held personally responsible as a director. That's where at the very beginning I said, David, please tell people to get advice. It's important that they do that in respect of this. If they're worried about trading whilst insolvent, they should get advice.
Okay, no, I get that. So a lot of webinars, interviews, advice lines and everything, there's an awful lot of talk about furlough at the moment, and it seems to be a very grey area. But Sharon's just asked the question, if directors can furlough, how can they keep their businesses open if they furlough themselves and ergo are not allowed to work on the business outside of the statutory requirements?
That's a really good question, Sharon, because and this is one of the areas that's been subject to debate. Initially, when furlough was talked about, it was very clear that it wouldn't be available to business directors, because they would have a responsibility to carry on trading within the business, to keep the business going. Otherwise, effectively, they're closing it down. And I think the answer, but I wouldn't like to say I'm an expert on furlough by any means, is that now it is recognised that maybe the business does have to close down. Effectively, they're not trading. They could continue to work in the business a little bit, the 20%, but it's worth investigating. As I say, look into it almost on a daily basis, because it is changing daily.
Okay. And do they, if people have their own accountant already, obviously your specialism, even though you're a chartered accountant, is the insolvency and trying to stop businesses closing down, I guess.
Yeah, absolutely. I would like to think of myself as a bit like an oncologist. I'm going back to my medical analogies. Okay. That I would like businesses to help them to work out if they can keep going.
Yep.
And if it's all possible that they can, give them the treatment effectively to keep going. So that's making use of the cash that's available, helping them to establish whether borrowing money is the right thing to do. And I would say there, and the same thing applies to both individuals and businesses, that they should don't borrow just because you can. Okay. So for example, as an individual, where there's a possibility of getting a mortgage holiday. I know I've spoken to people who've said, it's great. I've got 3 months where I don't need to pay my mortgage. So I've got that money available. You're borrowing. The mortgage terms further down the line are likely to be more difficult. The repayment terms that you will get will be difficult. You're still going to have to pay that off. So be very, very careful about borrowing.
Yes, I've seen that. We investigated our own personal mortgage, and it just adds it on to the end, doesn't it? The interest payment. So it's not, they're not giving away mortgage payments. They're not writing them off. They're just deferring them till the end. And that could mean you're paying a little bit longer or a little bit more after that. So the term that I've heard a lot at the moment is mothballing. What do people mean by mothballing?
Well, when it was first talked about, I looked at what the definition of mothballing is. And mothballing is described as to hold something in a good condition, ready for future use.
Okay.
And the same thing then applies to a business. It's saying, what are the critical things you've got to look after and spend money on to keep your business such that if you were able to open the doors again tomorrow, you could do that.
Okay, so it's prompted a really good question that's just come in from Gary, and he asks, would working on future business development be classed as a statutory requirement?
Not quite sure what you mean by a statutory requirement there, Gary. Maybe thinking about a director's responsibilities?
Yeah, I think that's exactly where it's coming from the furlough point of view. So if I step back and I don't work physically on my business in terms of dealing with clients and customers and projects, but I'm actually just trying to plan for what could I do in the future, is that still considered working on your business? We're
thinking about furlough again here, aren't we?
I think so, yes. Yeah, Gary's confirmed that. In
terms of the furlough, I think you're all right if you're effectively working a small amount in your business. So you're doing that 20% that your business could pay you for, but not if you are genuinely working all day, every day on your business. Well, you're not furloughed.
Yeah, Okay, that makes sense. That makes sense. Right. So, how can a company get government-backed borrowing to help?
The government borrowing is there and available. And again, it's one of those things that's changing on a daily, weekly basis. Initially, the borrowing that was there was very, very strict. And lenders are still going to put in strict criteria. But they were at a place where that lenders were only going to lend if there was availabilities of personal guarantees. So right from the beginning, it was a question that that money could be available, but only if the directors had assets they could use, not including their family home, but any other assets. Now, those have recently been relaxed, so the requirement for personal guarantees has been reduced. But again, I'm back to the place to be very careful about borrowing money, because one way or another, you've got to pay it back. The government are going to look to guarantee 80% of the borrowing, but they were the lenders, and the lenders are still the banks. They've got to come to you first to get their money back before the government will pay out. They have to have exhausted every avenue to get their money back before the government will pay out. So they're going to treat it like any other lending.
Okay, so we did have a follow-on from Gary's previous question that, and actually I heard someone mention this the other day. I'm not going to divulge any names, but again, with all these payout support, furloughing, not, whether if you do this one activity, obviously it would go against furlough or something along those lines. And people saying, well, they're not going to have the manpower to check every single small detailed transaction. So someone has basically said, well, if you can prove that you haven't sent out any invoices during that time, you haven't been taking any extra monies in or actively working, do you think there's going to be people trying to flout the system? And what would you say to those people, I guess?
Well, I would like to regard myself as being very honest. I would say it was the way I was brought up, and the system's there to protect people. So I think there's very hard decisions to make of, if I'm working in my business, then I'm not entitled to furlough. Furlough is there for people who are not working in the business during this period. If you're working, then you're working. And indeed, although you may not be generating money today, by working in the business, you'll be generating money tomorrow. So you are working in your business.
Okay, so you need to be very careful. Many participants are self-employed or companies with 1 or 2 employees. So what are the considerations really for them?
Well, if they're a limited company, the same things apply in terms of they have the facilities to things that are available to limited companies. And actually, I'm just going to stop for a moment and say, I can hear, this is the power of modern technology, but I can hear somebody using a garden water thing outside. Is it disturbing? Would you like me to just...
I can't hear it, so it's okay.
That's fine, I can, but that's no problem. So as far as companies are concerned of any size, they have the same things available to them. One of the things that's available to any business that is VAT registered is the ability to not have to pay their VAT that's due between the 20th of March and 20th of June. However, don't forget that that's borrowing.
Again, it's not going away, is it?
It's not going away. So that's available. Now, I can imagine that somebody who has a small business, perhaps it's only them or they've got 1 other employee, the thought is, oh, that money is in my company. That money that I've not got to pay out for my VAT at the moment, that's in my company. I'm struggling a bit to buy food, or I'm being a bit dramatic there, but you know, things are tough for me as an individual. Can I take that money out? And you've got to be really careful there, because the answer to that is no. It's the money belongs to the company. So that's something to be aware of. Now, as a self-employed person, there is now the facility for self-employed people to effectively get furlough. They're going to get 80% of their self-employed income, but they need to have submitted a tax return for the year 2018-19. Now, the HMRC have given a little bit of flexibility there in terms of saying, if you are late with your tax return, they'll still let you submit it and they won't penalise you. But it is, you do need to have submitted that tax return to get a payment.
Okay. I do want to come back to the self-employed or companies with just a couple of employees, but a question that's coming from Paula is there any government support for a new limited company that started trading in January this year, when PAYE starts as of April? It looks like they don't think they're going to get anything.
I'm thinking out loud, Paula, but I think you're right. For you to be furloughed, the PAYE system needs to have been in place at the end of February.
Yep.
So you're not entitled to any furlough. In terms of anything else, I'm just trying to think of what else you could be able to get. I'm not quite sure on the criteria of the grants as to whether that's available to new companies, but it does look as though you may not get anything. The big question is, what were you doing before that? Is there any way that you can claim any money for in respect of what you were doing before you started your limited company? The big question that you raised there, which is that me coming back to cash, which is my thing, is very, very important for you to make sure you're not paying out on anything you don't need to be.
Okay, thank you for that answer. So again, the government are helping different types of businesses. Some people feel a little bit left out. Obviously, the directors of small limited companies as opposed to freelancers. Obviously, the grass seems to be green for everybody else rather than the individuals. But what is the government doing to help these different types of businesses?
Well, the key source of funds is that furloughed type of funds. I think where certainly some small businesses, self-employed people are, and businesses where the directors have paid themselves a very low salary and taken money as dividends, yep, are feeling that they are being penalised. And that's a very tricky one. I think HMRC are trying to find an objective line in which to measure somebody's income. And that's why they're saying, okay, so it's what you've been paid through the PAYE system if you're a director. It's what you disclosed on your tax returns if you're somebody that's self-employed. Yep. So it is difficult because it means for people where they have sought to reduce their tax liability in the past, now in a way they're being penalised for that because of that objective measure. So
somebody who's just set up their own business, and again, it kind of relates back to Paula's question, and she's saying, if you were in full-time employment, but obviously you've left that before February the 28th or whichever government cut-off date they gave for furloughing and the equivalent, and then but you set up your company as you were finishing off, and then you kind of start late, there's nothing really for you, is there?
No.
So you're in that really no man's land at the moment. I don't know what the suggestion would be. Again, we're looking at this from a perspective of stopping your business going down the drain, and we're looking at the finances, what's in place. But there are obviously lots of practical considerations when doing that. Gary has just pointed out, obviously, you're still taxed on dividends. There needs to be some upside for the risk of being a business owner. And yeah, I don't know what it is at the moment.
I agree with you there, Gary. Absolutely, there should be an upside for being a business owner and taking the risk. Unfortunately, that's a very difficult thing to measure, and I think that's where HMRC have had to try and find some objective line.
It's a very grey area, but things still keep changing, don't they? Quite often, day by day. So if you've got a good accountant that's got their finger on the pulse, keep getting in touch with them, I think. So again, someone's just point. Sorry.
I can see that Sharon's made a really good point, actually, in the questions and answers, David, which I'd forgotten about. Thanks very much for that, Sharon. The point that she's raised, I think it was Paula who was asking earlier about that she was employed before and what's available to her now. And the answer is you should be able to get some universal credit for you as an individual, because you can't get finance through your company.
Thank you, Sharon. That's a good save there. We like that one.
Thank you. I'm thinking from a corporate point of view, and that was a really, really helpful point.
Okay. And plus you pay corporation tax before dividends anyway. So It's just been pointed out as well. Now, obviously, saving your business. We had a conversation a little while back about different things, and sometimes there's a time where, as you've said before, do you take the loan? Is the business viable to actually try and survive it by getting these loans and these extra benefits and grants? Or do you have to realize that sometimes it wasn't working in the first place and adding burden is not necessarily the right thing to do? What do you think?
I think you make a really, really good point. A very important thing for a business, any business, to be doing at this point in time is to be considering their cash flow. It may be that they had reserves in their business beforehand, and that's the first place that they should be looking to take the money from, not from borrowing it. And actually the same thing applies as an individual. Rather than taking the mortgage holiday to start with, you should be considering using your savings if you have any. Borrowing is only something you should do where you feel confident about trying to pay it back. What I've suggested before is that the loans are called a business interruption loan, and you should be minimizing how much you think it's going to cost for your business to be interrupted and only borrowing that amount. Now, if you need more than that, for example, because you were probably struggling in your trade before this crisis happened, this might be the time to say, no, I don't want to incur any further liability because I'm going to really struggle to pay it back.
Okay, good advice. So another great question that we did have in is, if a creditor has started to take legal action against a business or an individual, can this be continued during the current crisis?
Now, again, this has been one where the goalposts have been moving. So there was initial advice that said, no, the courts were closing, or certainly in terms of dealing with these sorts of things, and that all the cases were going to be adjourned. The latest view on that is that bankruptcies and winding up petitions, i.e. those considerations where somebody owes money to somebody and they're not doing anything about it, those can still be heard. Now, they're going to be heard by video link and all that sort of thing. And I know that there's already talking to solicitors that they've said there's two methods. There's a BT method, and they're not using Zoom, I don't think. I think they're using other methods.
Okay.
And they've been having trouble with the video links. So then they're getting adjourned. My advice to anybody, if they do have action from creditors, is talk to them. Everybody's in the same boat at the moment. Everybody's struggling. Everybody's trying to work out new ways of dealing with their business. So when you're in that boat, talk to people. Don't put your head in the sand. Be a good communicator.
Okay. So now obviously is as good a time as any. If things aren't working, you've got an opportunity to think about it, put it right, but open lines of communication. Who do you think are the most valuable people as a small business owner or a freelancer you should be talking to right now?
Well, I would say, as I say, the people that you owe money to, anybody who's going to start putting pressure on you, talk to them. Similarly, people who owe you money, if they're not paying, well, see if you can have a compromise with them. So you are getting some money, you're keeping your lifeblood flowing. Similarly, I would say, if you're concerned about your cash flow, talk to your accountant. Let them help you. That's their area of expertise. I know that many businesses, particularly at the small end, intend to do a cash flow, but it never quite happens. Well, now's the time to learn.
Okay. I am one of the people who might think, well, that's out of my comfort zone. I don't really want to do that, so I'm going to put it off till tomorrow. If people start chasing you for money, you haven't communicated with them, are you on the better footing if you make contact first? If it did go to any kind of arbitration or court of law or anything, and you've shown your willingness to do something in advance, does that count in your favour?
Well, certainly if you get to the point of receiving a petition from the pre-petition stage from a creditor, so i.e. if a creditor is really threatening legal action and they take it to court, it's really important that you respond to that, because otherwise it will just continue without you having any say.
Okay. At this moment in time, this is one completely off cuff, so you're not prepared for this one, but a lot of small businesses and freelancers, their registered address may well be their accountant. And a lot of accountancy firms who have multiple staff are still not shutting up shop, but they are still doing home working. I don't know if accountancy firms are having mail redirected or whether things could sit there and not be dealt with. But obviously you as the business owner would be accountable, would you not?
That's a really good question. I know Companies House are putting a lot of things online. So as an insolvency practitioner, there are various forms where I have to submit things to Companies House via email. I think they are trying to avoid paper as much as possible. So they're sending information electronically. Now, one of the things that's quite often what will start the ball rolling for a business that's failing is where they haven't prepared their accounts. So I don't know the answer in terms of what will happen with the paper. I would say the businesses I know that have closed, so sort of financially based businesses that have closed the doors, they are sending somebody in every day
Okay.
to look at the post. Perhaps that's a question to ask of your accountant if you're worried.
So is there anything that I've missed that I should be dealing with, I guess?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So obviously we've had loads of questions in there and we've had a few in advance. Is there light at the end of this tunnel? Do you think from the start when obviously COVID-19 reared its ugly head, the measures the government are putting in place and trying to address, because obviously small business owners and freelancers were kind of left out of the loop for a while. Do you think they're still addressing the people that can be supported in the hour of need?
I think that's a very difficult thing to define. Who needs help? Probably all of us.
Yeah.
Whether it's financial or whether it's to do with our mental health. There's very many aspects where everybody needs help. I think personally, I would say some of the light at the end of the tunnel has come from new relationships, new people that I've met, perhaps over Zoom, by the support of a business community. That's a real light at the end of the tunnel. I think we will have new relationships at the end of this journey.
Okay.
And it's a great time to reflect, put a business plan together. Think about what the real priorities are. I know at a previous subs meeting, Sarah Harkness did a session on getting us to think about why we're in business.
Yes.
Is it for us? What do you get from your business? Perhaps this is the time to reflect on all of those things and have the time to do it.
Well, funny you should mention Sarah. She has posted on Facebook Live that they go in and pick up their post twice a week. So if you're an accountant client,
I think that's typical. I think most accountants and sort of financially based businesses that know that it's really important that they are picking up information and they'll go in regularly to do so.
Okay, well, to kind of finish, we've kind of hit the half an hour mark almost there, but to finish on a lighter note and not intended to offend anyone out there who might be struggling at the moment, and really for a bit of fun, so please take it in the way it is intended. I would like to mention a few industries that are already in trouble during this time. A local bra manufacturer has gone bust, a submarine company has gone under, a manufacturer of food blenders has now gone into liquidation, and a dog kennel has had to call in the retrievers. A company supplying paper for origami enthusiasts unfortunately has now folded, and Interflora is pruning its business while Dynarod has gone down the drain. But the saddest one of all is the Swirls ice cream man, who was found dead covered with nuts and raspberry sauce. He couldn't take it anymore, so he topped himself. And I'm so sorry, it's probably not very funny. And people are making remarks on our questions and answers now, which I won't even mention. And obviously, it is a really serious time. The whole purpose of having an interview with you, Janet, was really just to say, there is a bit of light at the end of the tunnel. There is always something you can do. And actually sitting on your laurels and doing absolutely nothing really isn't an option, is it? No.
There's always opportunities. I'm sure that some of you will have seen the thing that I think it was in the plague, when Einstein discovered some of his theories. sitting at home idle. There's much we can do when we have the time to think.
Indeed, indeed. So to Sharon and Paula and Gary, I apologise for the comments at the end. They came through on a message to me earlier today from my business mentor, also my stepmom, and I just thought they were kind of funny. It was just appropriate for the discussion we were having today. So hopefully no one's taken offended. If anybody does want to get in touch, and if anyone is really, really struggling or wants any support, Subs does have 3 groups. We're across Altrincham, Wilmslow and Stockport. We have a counsellor and hypnotherapist. We have insolvency practitioners. We have accountants. We have HR. We have lots of things. So if your need is not being fulfilled by whoever you're needing, whoever you're using currently, and you want some added support, please literally on the subs group, just say what you need and we'll try and get some contacts to you. But don't despair. Everyone is in the same boat. I really have to say a massive thank you to Janet Mayo from DMC Recovery. It's been an absolute pleasure having you online and interview with. So thank you very much. Thanks to all those who have joined us. We're going to be signing off now and ending this interview. It's going to be around on our Facebook page for a long while. If you think it was relevant, please spread the word. We're going to be doing more. I've got a couple of great interviewees lined up for the coming weeks. So we'll sign off now. Thank you once again, Janet.
Thanks, David.
And thanks to everybody for staying with us. Bye-bye.
Bye.